Hi, and welcome to a special episode of Word Mentality on Grammar and Thongs, where we look at phrases that have to do with hot and cold. The human body is very affected by temperature, quite susceptible to changes in temperature, so it's not surprising that we get lots of phrases to do with being hot and being cold. If we look at this chart up here, right at the top is hot, and when you're hot, you might have an elevated heart rate, you might get flushed, you're actually hot. But that's also what happens to us when we find somebody attractive, and so that's why we say somebody might be hot for somebody else. And that's probably where the meaning is transferred onto the person that you're finding attractive, and you call them hot because of the effect it has on the person viewing. If we go down the scale, warmth has connotations of friendliness and comfort, and so you give somebody a warm reception. If your emotions are cooling off towards that person a bit more, they're more likely to get a chilly reception, perhaps even an icy stare. And of course, right at the bottom, if you have a murderer who has no empathy or feeling for their victim whatsoever, that you might call it a cold-blooded murder. So these are all to do with sort of our internal temperatures, our thermals, and our emotions. It's not only humans that have these the effect of these temperatures, it's also animals. And so we get phrases like hot on their heels, which is a hunting term. And not only were they close to their prey, the hunting animals, perhaps dogs in this case, as in they were close to their heels, but why we call it hot on their heels is because the trail that they're following is actually from the warmth of their prey. And so it's actually a reference to the warmth of life. That's the scent that they're following. From this we get hot pursuit, which is a fairly logical step, and of course if they lose that, then we say that the trail has gone cold. Speaking of cold, we get lots of colourful sayings from the idea of being cold, and I'd like to go through 4 of them very quickly here. Cold turkey is to quit something suddenly, and probably where this comes from is the idea of a dish that is just cold turkey, having no frills. It's got no sort of ceremony to it. It's very simple, and this is the simplest way to quit something. To pour cold water on something is to criticise an idea so much that people tend to not be excited by it anymore. And it's probably from the idea of literally pouring cold water, perhaps on 2 dogs who are fighting to stop them, or perhaps on 2 dogs who are being a bit too friendly to stop them. So it takes out the excitement from the idea by pouring cold water on it. The last I'll look at are cold shoulder. So to give someone the cold shoulder is to snub somebody. And it's probably from medieval times. There's suggestions that it may be that you give them the seat that's furthest from the fire, so you literally give them the cold shoulder. But more likely it's from this idea, this practice in medieval times, that you would give hospitality to travellers who stopped in. And if they were somebody you knew or they knew your relatives, then you might give them a lavish meal and cook a feast for them. But if they were somebody that you didn't know that well, or perhaps they'd overstayed their welcome, then you might give them the cold shoulder of mutton left over from last night. So you'd literally give them the cold shoulder. And lastly, cold feet. Originally, cold feet meant somebody who was poor, didn't have many resources, and so perhaps had no shoes. But of course, we use it today to mean somebody who has become nervous or uncertain and wants to back out of a situation. They've got cold feet, or they're getting cold feet. And the first reference to it in this way was in a novel in 1862 where a character was in a card game, a high-stakes card game, and wanted to back out of it. And so the excuse he used was that it was getting late and he was literally getting cold feet because it was a cold night, and that was his excuse for leaving. So there you go. That's hot and cold. Thank you.